The Fast Saga is returning to theaters this weekend for the newest installment in the franchise, and I'm really excited to talk about this one because if you guys don't know already, I am a really big fan of the Fast and Furious movies, as I reviewed all of them a couple years ago before F9, and you know that I'm going to be really hyped for this one, so let's get into the review. Fast X is the 11th installment in the Fast and Furious franchise and the 10th installment in the main franchise, as this movie is directed by Louis Leterrier, who takes over from Justin Lin, who actually was replaced in the first week of principal photography, and that is also why this is the 8th most expensive film of all time, around $340 million, because all the actors and the crew had to just stay there and be paid while they got a new director on board, and Louis Leterrier actually had uncredited rewrites of the script and how this movie went. And while all of these different factors could lead this movie to being sort of a disaster, I honestly thought that this movie was really entertaining and a pretty solid entry in this series. I'm not going to go out of my way and say that these Fast and Furious movies are amazing by any means. I am a fan, as in, like, I understand that these movies aren't all that good, and I don't really enjoy the first 4 movies. Like, when Fast 5 came out, that's when the series got good, and I've liked every entry since. I really enjoy the heist, over the top big action sequences and all about the family and the crew, rather than just the boring street racing criminal like stuff that is just very standardized things and just really boring comparative to what we have now. And that's why these movies have done so much better critically and commercially. So let's just dive into all the positives I have first, and I do have to start with the action. This is the reason why people go see these movies, because they're so big, over the top, tons of fun, and this movie actually is pretty well shot with its action sequences. I thought it was very creative, especially one scene in the beginning of the movie with the big action scene when set in Rome that I thought was really good. I also thought the hand-to-hand combat scenes were also particularly good. This movie also had pretty good special effects as well, like nothing compared to Dune or Tenet or any of these other big movies, but I found it to be very convincing, and you really do feel the budget is big for this movie. You have so many big actors. This movie has so many different locations and so much action. So I'm really glad the budget does feel utilized, even if it is like just too much and it should probably be around like 250 million instead. It still feels like there was a lot of effort put into the look and feel of this movie. I also really enjoy the cast here, as I enjoy these characters a lot. I mean, they aren't the most complex characters in the world, but I do remember all the characters' names and the lore of these movies, and I do get excited when certain small characters show up and you're like, hey, that's that character from that movie. Vin Diesel knows what he is doing with this series, and he is a producer on these movies as well, but the biggest standout here has to be the newcomer Jason Momoa as the villain of this movie, and he does a great job. His character and his personality works perfectly with the tone of this movie, which is very silly, over the top, has some great humor, but when the stakes need to be there, he can do it, and he's actually a very good villain. I loved every scene he was in. Composer Brian Tyler returns to the franchise, and I think he did a really good job with the score here. It's not the greatest score in movie history, but for an action movie score, I really felt the intensity and the awesomeness that ensues within the score in this movie. It also had pretty good sound mixing as well, with the dialogue feeling nice and loud and not with the score overtaking the dialogue, which you've seen a lot of contemporary modern action movies these days, which really pisses me off, especially if you're watching it at home and you don't want to annoy the neighbors and you gotta turn it down, turn it all the way back up. I also have to say that this is probably the funniest film in the Fast and Furious franchise, and a lot of it's because of how self-aware it is and how goofy and silly it is, and the humor comes from everybody in this movie, especially from John Cena, who plays Jacob Toretto from the last film. He was hilarious in this movie, and John Cena is actually a very low-key hilarious person person, so I'm really glad he's able to shine. But one of the things this movie does pretty well is actually the structure of the story with its characters, as this does have a Avengers Endgame, Infinity War type of feel. I know that's really weird for a Fast and Furious movie, but there's so many characters and there's been so many movies that you do have to balance these characters out. And I do feel that these characters do get a lot of time to shine. Whether certain stories aren't as good as others, and it does feel kind of all over the place at times, I do feel that each of the characters is given something to do, and I wasn't really bored watching this movie either. And it does feel like it's going back into formula, like, you know, Green Goblin says. Unfortunately, this movie does have quite a few negatives, as you would expect for a Fast and Furious movie, and I always got to start with the dialogue, because let me tell you, it's really cheesy, it's bad, it's not good. I'm not gonna pretend like it is, and I know for some people that could really ruin this movie, and I can totally hear you. There's a lot of bad exposition in this movie, especially in the middle of the film, where characters are just explaining things. Jason Momoa's character also says like the same thing every 5 seconds. I also really didn't enjoy a lot of the editing in this movie, and it's more with the dialogue heavy scenes where there is just so many cuts for just one scene of dialogue that really shouldn't happen. Might as well just redo the whole cut and just make it look good. It was very distracting early on. The action has pretty decent editing, so I mean, I guess that's what's mostly important, but when there's a lot of dialogue and there's too many characters in one scene, the editing is all over the place. But I guess that's what happens when you have 4 editors for like a movie like this. Overall, guys, Fast X is an improvement over F9 in bringing you all the characters you enjoy and the action and the cheesiness, and it's going to have fans wanting the next Fast and Furious movie to come as soon as possible. This is definitely going to be a crowd pleaser for the fans. This movie is going to probably make a lot of money, and hopefully it can at least break even with its massive budget. Sure, it has all the criticisms you would come to expect, and I do feel this franchise is slowly going down, but I don't think it's lost all of its energy yet. I do feel there's a lot of effort that did go into the presentation of the film as well, and the actors really wanted to commit to this movie, and I think this movie is a lot of fun. Thank you guys so much for checking out this video. I just want to know below in the comments section, have you guys seen Fast X, and where would you guys rank this among the other Fast and Furious movies? I am going to be doing a ranking of all of the films, even though there are 2 other movies that are coming out. I'm still gonna do it anyways, as always, and I will see you all in the following video.